Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Soulfluent Leadership Podcast. I'm Priscilla Stefan here today with Julia. Say your last name properly, Julia.
Nagutova. I'm Julia
Nag-
Nagutova. Hello,
Julia
everybody.
Nagutova. We're showing up today from an evening here in Northern California, and Julia is in a sunny afternoon in Australia. So we're crossing the globe today for today's talk. I'm very, very, very excited to talk to Julia today. We're going to talk about all things money, astrocartography, money beliefs, healing our money story, being who we really, really are, and honoring the truth of our desires on a whole other level. So buckle up, stay tuned for the hour. I promise you this will be very, very rich. So this is the sixth and final episode of the Expand Your Freedom Healer series, where I'm interviewing a healer and practitioner that I have personally worked with, who added a very special ingredient to my healing journey over the last few years, especially the last year. And Julia and I met in April of this year on Facebook, of course, right? Who doesn't meet on Facebook? And she was the answer to a prayer that I'd had for 3 years. And so always goes back to when the timing is right, I guess. I still have my issues with divine timing, but that's a conversation we can have later. That the person shows up, and it was an instant connection for both of us. It didn't make sense. We had never heard of each other. It was just like, boom, that's it. And that's great, because then you just know it's a hell yes, right? So about Julia, Julia has always worked with money, around money, with people who have money, right? She worked for 7 years as a financial analyst. She was born and raised partially, I guess, or mostly in Europe, but is a global citizen, the best kind there is. After quitting her financial analyst position, she moved into real estate, and then learned about the topic of mindset, and then became a really masterful coach, a neurolinguistic programming practitioner. She was also highly, highly intuitive, psychic, and has a spidey, uncanny, annoying, intense way of pinpointing exactly what the limiting beliefs and issues are that are holding you back, especially around money and having what you say you really want. And I love Julia because she does hold you to the highest standard of what you say you want and nothing else. So again, buckle up. So welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. This was such a beautiful introduction. I think the best one I have ever heard. I would be able to come up with myself. But this is what I appreciate about you. So you have such a beautiful way to communicate and use the right words and to express yourself through words. It's still blowing my mind.
Thank you. Yeah, so Julia and I support each other, but today we're going to talk about Julia's magic in the world as a healer, as a practitioner, a masterful practitioner. And we started to work together through astrology, astrocartography, and talking about money, right? This 2023 was the year for me of digging into the underbelly of money. And I have a ton of books. My husband jokes, he's like, my God, I've never seen somebody with so many books on money. And where's the money? And so, but each person has their own unique medicine, and Julia has a very direct, intuitive way of presenting things in a way that I personally can receive and also unlock to see from a different perspective, right? And so my initial wish was not only to work with someone to really go deep on my money beliefs, but also I was curious about astrocartography. I'd heard about this thing called astrocartography, which is a way to look at your astrological natal chart and understand where particular lines of different planets land on your chart, I guess. And so that can determine where in the world, and then I guess you put those lines across the globe somehow. She can explain it better. And you can identify what places on the planet offer different energies that are either supportive or not supportive or neutral in kind of the areas that you want to expand on: prosperity, relationships, communications, healing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but Julia, we first met because we were talking about money and fortune. And there was something about you that had a very strong standard of, we want things, we can have things. So why aren't we having them? Right? Typical Julia. So what's getting in the way? Let's get to it. Right. So tell me a little bit about what got you involved in working with your clients around money and fortune, about your approach, because you bring so much to the table. There's astrology, NLP, coaching, energetics, gene keys, human design. I mean, you put everything in there to really understand a person's unique abilities. And as you said, you went from analyzing money to analyzing personalities and what's really holding us back. So take it away. Where do you want to go from here?
Wow, there's so many aspects to touch on, and I'm sure we're gonna touch on all of them. But yeah, let's start maybe with going from analyzing money to analyzing being financial analyst, analyzing money for as a P&Ls for big companies, to analyzing people and who we truly are. There was a day in my life where I decided that I don't want to work for anyone else anymore, especially I don't want to be a financial analyst. The major two factors related to the work itself were that I was not communicating with people. I was only doing numbers all day long, and I was analyzing numbers, which I'm very good at, but I felt on some level bored because I would not speak to people, and I would sit all day long on my desk, and I couldn't stand it anymore. Like, I literally had every half an hour, I need to go to the bathroom, I need to go to the kitchen, I need to go for a walk, I need to go to the office on the other side of the building, all the way so I can get my body moving, because I could not sit anymore. And there was a different accident, let's say, that played out at work that made me decide, okay, I'm gonna quit this job. I don't know where it's going, but I know I'm gonna follow my heart, and I'm gonna do what I love. And the first thing that came to my mind is like, what do I love? And I asked myself, it's like, oh, I love real estate. It's like, okay, so let's go to real estate, because I always loved real estate. I had a friend, she was a real estate agent back in Germany, and she was asking me for help to find tenants for her apartments, to find an apartment. So I was doing all this like a hobby for my family, for my friends, for myself. So that was super easy. I said, let's go with this one. And then, as you said, I went for 1 year to different seminars around real estate, and attended several ones that were 3 or 4 days long. And then obviously the subject of mindset came in, and I was like, wow, I have always been doing this, but I have never known what that was. There is a classification. So that catapulted actually the psychology. And as a little girl, I'm a Scorpio sun. So as a little girl, I was always fascinated about the Scorpio. So I was buying books and I was reading them. And my family astrology was not as, let's say, appropriate or something that we trust. So my mom used to talk me out, and she said, this is just a waste of time, pretty much. So when I was in Australia, when I came here in 2014 and quit then financial analyst role and started to do the real estate and the mindset and psychology and NLP, I remembered, oh, hold on a second. Now that I do psychology, now that I actually start to analyze myself instead of the numbers that I usually would, now I'm analyzing actually myself. I want to understand myself on a whole deeper new level. Let me pull up the books again. Let me look into again, what was that actually that I so enjoyed reading about. And what I identified, we don't only have our sun sign or our moon or rising sign. We have like 12 different positions at least, plus the aspects between all the astrology natal charts. So we have planets, we have zodiacs, we have houses. There's a lot to look into. And first time, always I was overwhelmed. But then I'm like, hold on. When I really read into that, there is so much depth to this. And every time I learn something new, every time I'm like, yeah, that is a part of me. But I was conditioned to suppress it. I was conditioned to not believe in that. I was conditioned not to trust it. I was literally shut off to believe in who I was, because of my upbringing, because where I was born in Ukraine. And so let's say my parents' most priority was to make sure that the children have something to eat and they have a good education and they have something like a good job that looks good on the paper and around all people, right? And that made the big shift. I was like, okay, there's so much more to myself. I want to dig deeper into this. So now I'm combining NLP, my analytical skills, the astrology factors, and all of the things together. And I'm starting literally to learn who I was, like who I am. It's like, who is this person? Because inside of me, I always felt like there was something else and so much more, but I couldn't touch it. I couldn't understand what it was. I just had a feeling. And so I went for this. It's like, okay, let me connect. What are the dots that I need to understand here? Where is this journey taking me? And it took me in all different directions, because as from human design, I'm a manifesting generator. So I'm multi-passionate. And Scorpio is also a sign that it's an 8th house. So Scorpio is about money, like when it comes to, let's say, big companies, working in the banks, working in finances. But Scorpio is also the psychologist and the one that goes to the depth, the ones that go to the deep roots. They also say Scorpio is the lying detector. Like a human being, just like a lie detector. We pick up stuff. We're very psychic. And we just can detect if something is true or not. And that was my sun sign. Plus, I have another 4 positions in this area. But I looked also into my destiny. It's like, what's my destiny? Where is it going? This is where I come from. Those are my experiences that I actually gathered over different lifetimes. So I'm already natural in those. I may be just listening to them and I'm remembering, but everything that I'm learning makes so much sense to me. It's like you've forgotten that then for, I don't know, for how many years and lives. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, of course, that makes so much sense, right? So it's not like a study. It's like, I remember who I was. And my North Node was in Taurus. And that when things started to get very, very interesting. And Taurus is the sign of stability. And it's also the sign of money, and also is the sign of real estate. Taurus are the real estate agents. Taurus are the ones that have the money. And so I was like, oh, so how interesting is that? So I have on both sides, literally opposition, where I come from and where I'm going, the money. But now the money is made differently. Where it was before in a company structure, now it's your own wealth. It's the real estate. It's a different way of doing money. It's a different way of earning. And also the Taurus is ruling the 2nd house. And the 2nd house is the self-worth, is the self-esteem, is how we value who we are. And this is where psychology and NLP started really to go deep, because on the root cause, I understood I was not valuing who I was because I was always criticized. I didn't know who I was because I was always turned down with what I wanted to do. And so that chapter started to be the self-worth, the money factor. It's like, how do we work on ourselves so that we receive, attract, manifest money that we truly desire, that we know, because I always had these big visions. I think around 15 years old or 16 years old, I said to my mom, I want to have several houses across the world and I want to have a boat, a yacht. And she said, you're watching way too many movies. And I said, no. I wanna live at the beach where the sun is shining with palm trees. I knew it, but I could never understand that. And so astrology reminded me, oh yeah, Taurus is the one that loves the luxury. Taurus is the one that loves the beauty. Taurus is the one that needs to be close to the ocean in the sunny weathers. It's like, oh, of course. Now that makes all of its sense. So I started to connect who I was, and I found, let's say, an explanation for everything that was going on in my mind for all these years. And I started working with people, and I offered, back then I was helping people to create their own business doing something that they love, passion and purpose. And I offered them, it's like, hey, right now I'm very into astrology. I go to very deep levels, new understandings of that. Would you like me to analyze your chart? That was just an idea. And I said, yes. And so I've done it for all of my clients. And everybody was mind blown. It's like, wow, that is so spot on. And that literally catapulted. It's like, okay, this is where it's taking me, astrology, to really help people understand themselves, help also to make that, let's say, logical connection between what society says or our parents or people that surround us versus what we know. Make that connection. Is like, why is it actually happening? There is an explanation for that, because all of that is, let's say, like archetypes, and we have several of them. We have different ones, and sometimes we have also in astrology difficulty positions, because once they all move, everybody has a different position. So then we say, okay, but there's also the karmic stuff. Everybody has some karma in their lives that they need to work through. And through this reading, I started to dive deeper into the areas that I needed to heal based on my chart, because I could see based on my chart and I knew they were happening, but the ego doesn't want to go there unless we see, this is why. And so I started to really dive deep and said, okay, putting the ego to the side. If we need to do some work here, then we're going to do this. And that's been the journey for the last 4 or 5 years.
Thank you for sharing. And I want to go back to this really critical point. And I think it was either the first or second call that we had when you were looking at my my natal chart. And I must say, I've had my natal chart read maybe 3 or 4 times over the course of my lifetime. And I think I told you 2 things up front. I'm not a huge believer. I'll take astrology with a grain of salt. And I need somebody to explain something to me in human terms. Because if you start talking about the aspect of the Venus to the Mars, I'm like, okay, that does not translate. You have to translate this in a way that will resonate and that will land for me, which you did. So listen up, people. Julia does speak the language that we will understand, and she gets straight to the point, mind you. But I want to get back to this really critical part of what you said, and the word naturally, but so important, right? You said, what is already natural, right? Who am I? And I would add, who am I naturally? Just as I breathe, what makes me me? What makes me come alive? And of course, there are shadows and karma and beliefs and all these, was it 12 houses, right? The 12 houses and all of that. Sure, we can analyze in the intricacies of the web of each person's chart. But this is so important, right? Because whether you're doing Akashic Records or doing astrology, we're all, I think, looking at that deeper soul level of the essence. What makes us who we are in this lifetime? And how does that even, looking at timelines, how do past lives come into this one? And what can we do in terms of our destiny and our fate and our fortune to heal so that we can change, perhaps for the better, expand ourselves in a better way? Because I think the natural part that is really when we talk about, well, who am I? Tell me about my purpose. Tell me about my chart. I think we want to remember, we want to have that felt experience that with all the conditioning, all the things that are pulling on our sense of authenticity and sense of self, that we can land back into what makes us us, right? That we're not convincing ourselves, we're not trying to be someone, we're not trying to heal, we're just, this is me, right? This is me, and it in your bones. It's such a natural way of being, breathing, thinking. And when you told me about the word affluence, right, in my chart, and it just kind of sort of came out of left field, and I was like, but oh yes, it was just like, oh my God, that is such a natural extension of me. It was my childhood. I was brought up wealthy. I was very well off, had access to so much. And like you, I was like, well, why is it that now I feel like I'm feeling like I almost like dimming down that part of myself that like finds things. And I want us to clarify too that this isn't about the things. It's about what the things represent as part of what makes us who we are. Like, right? You and I know I don't need the brand names, although I can always use more diamonds, not lab made, but naturally mined. And so what makes us who we are? And in a world today where we're craving leaders and we're craving people, entrepreneurs, anything who are just themselves, who have the courage to be themselves, you have access to give people the information to let them know about themselves. So how does who we are, astrology, tie into our money story, fortune, our fullest expression of ourselves in this life? Big question, I know.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a second. I just wanted also to share something because when you started to talk about diamonds and labels, I remember there was a time in my life, I think somewhere between 20s and almost 30s. So let's say until 30s, before, because I probably wouldn't even understand labels. But I remember, for example, if I would go into to buy perfume, let's say, right? Let's say, I was okay with, let's say, Giorgio Armani. That was okay for me. But when I saw Chanel, when I saw Dior, I was literally resenting them. I'm like, who would buy this? No, they're not good. I was literally talking down on labels and I did not understand why I was doing that. And I think similar things will also, if I, let's say, because I love perfume, but like one of my senses is to smell, right? So I love perfumes. And let's say if you go window shopping or something, I remember even if I would be on the street where all the brand designers would be, and let's say one part of the street you have Zara, Mango, H&M, and then it somehow progresses to all the, let's say, Louis Vuitton and Chanel and whatever, right? I remember, like, as long as I was going on the one side of the street, let's say Zara, Mango, H&M, I felt okay. I felt comfortable. But as soon I knew the next shops are starting to build up, I would literally change and go to the other side of the passage of the road. So I don't even come close to the shops because, and that is something that took me years to understand, because on a deep, deep level, I felt like that is not for me. I'm not good enough to walk here. I'm not good enough to even be here. If people are gonna see me even walking by, they're gonna judge me. Who are you to walk here? You don't deserve to be here. Pretty much. That was a feeling that I had. And when that started to really like shift, I think I had a friend and she had a very nice perfume. And I asked her, oh my God, this is so beautiful. What is this perfume? And then she said, let's say Dior or Chanel. I don't know. And I'm like, oh, this is the brand that I resent for so many years. But if I don't know what it is, I like it a lot. And that was like, oh, there is something to look into here. And so when I started to do the money work, going back to astrology, Taurus energy, second house energy, self-worth, is like, oh, there is something more to here. And I've done a big decision back in 2022 that I said when I was living in Ibiza, I want to live in the wealthiest area in Ibiza. It was close to the town. It's Marina Botafogo, considered the millionaires that go there on vacation. And I said, I'm going to live there. Because I knew when I was crossing the street and I was looking at people and at men and at women, I had this feeling again, I don't belong here. I felt ashamed. It's like everything was just bubbling up. It's like, what are you doing here? And I said, no, I'm going to get an apartment here. I'm going to live here because I need to feel comfortable as I belong and I deserve and I'm worthy to be part of that. That was for my body a shocker because there was no escape. The moment I stepped out of my door or I went on the balcony, it was all around me. I was just in the midst of that. And I think astrology was a big stepping stone for me to understand those things. Because I think without astrology and without psychology, I probably would still feel the same way. And that is when the body rejects it, and we reject it. Then logically we say no, but actually we desire it because everyone else told me, Julia, why don't you go this straight away? This is your area. But I couldn't see myself this way. They could see it, but I couldn't. And then people were saying, people that didn't meet me before, they would just maybe see me on a picture or something, or somebody would talk about me. And I said, yeah, but Julia is all about the money. And I was like, I'm not all about the money. But hence, so many people have that impression, I'm all about the money. Maybe I should start speaking about the money. And this is when it started to turn and shift.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I play devil's advocate? Just because I think this is a clarification, especially for those of us who are in the coaching world, the spiritual world. There has been a lot of toxic lifestyle marketing of, the freedom lifestyle and go make $1 million and go on the yacht and take your laptop to. I want you to clarify, this is not what we're talking about, right? I don't know if you or maybe other people would necessarily have affluence in the same position or even maybe in their chart in the same way like I have, or however yours is positioned, right? So what does, at the end of the day, beneath the surface, beneath the labels, beneath the millionaire row in Ibiza, or beneath, the diamonds that I love, how does this really speak to who we are, like the energies of what really make us come alive? Because not everyone is going to even care. Like they might be having a whole other life path. So
Right.
at the deeper level, what are we really talking about here, right?
For me personally, I like beauty. That's also the Venus part, right? So I love beautiful things. So let's say, is it flowers? Is it palm trees? Is it the color of the water, of the ocean? So I like colorful things and I love beautiful things. So for me, beauty is a necessity to feel myself. Otherwise, I feel depressed. So I can also look on pictures, obviously, right? But that kind of causes depression inside of me. Whereas when I look at creative things, visual things, fashion, colors, I feel alive. I literally feel alive. And I think in my personal case, it is not something that I said, oh, I want to belong to them because let's say I'm better or whatever. It was more like, my soul was guiding me. You love the beauty. You love all of that, but you were conditioned to resent it. You were conditioned to think bad about that. So it was more like me coming home to myself is like deep, 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 deep down. I loved it, but I didn't know that. I forgot it, let's say. And so with every little thing, I was actually, I like it. There was still a lot of judgment, but then there was this truth. Actually, I do like it. Actually, there was a reason why, with such a young age, I wanted to have a yacht. The yacht is not a cheap thing to have, right? But I knew straight away I wanted to have a yacht. It's like, who has a yacht? There you go. Going back to the answer, right? And so for me, it was a part of myself that I was suppressing. It was a part of myself that naturally felt this was my home. This was home for me. Even though energetically and how I felt on the inside, I was miles away, right? So it's like, okay, let's go back to the roots. And I started to allow myself to think about, how would I love to look? Where would I like to, let's say, go for dinner or go out or spend my time? How would I like to dress? And when I started to look at all of those things without judgment, without having, let's say, my social network, my parents, my family, my friends around me, without anyone there. And that happened because I actually went to Australia, because I was so far away from everyone that nobody could say anything. I was literally, I can do it now. Nobody is going to interfere with what I'm doing. And when I looked at all of these things and I understood, this is an affluent lifestyle. This is literally a millionaire's lifestyle. But before, I didn't even connect those things. I just knew what I like, but I didn't connect that all the things that I like cost a lot of money. I was like, oh, now we have to make sure that we actually earn that money, because whatever I like is going to be required of me to pay way more than what I'm used to pay for things. And this is, again, this is Taurus energy. Taurus is about luxury. And when I had my spiritual awakening and I was starting to heal all of these aspects, at some point, I was standing on this balcony and looking at the Yves Saint Laurent and Louis Vuitton shops. And it came to me, all these designers, whoever produced all these labels, created all these fashion items, luxury, jewelry, whatever that is, yachts, whatever, they had an idea. An idea is actually a creative spark. It's actually, they've been open channel to receive from higher up whatever that creation is. And so I was standing on my balcony with a coffee and I was looking at them, and that came to me at the stores. And I was like, they had an idea. That is creativity. And they are able to channel all of that. That is actually spiritual. That is actually channeling. And so they put it on a paper or whatever way they have to picture whatever that is that they want to create. And then they inside feel worthy enough to put as many zeros as they want. And then it was like, boom. I'm like, we're bridging spirituality with luxury.
And that's what you do.
Exactly.
And your brand is the Conscious Millionaire, which is a brilliant name, mind you.
Thank you.
And I think this is such an important piece, because when we talked about affluence for me, right, and you had your own ahas, right, it was so natural to me, but I was judging it and suppressing it because I felt I would be judged. Oh, she was born with this food. She doesn't know how hard things are. Consciousness is changing. We're not supposed to be talking about, material things. There are many more important things to be talking about, right? And we all, especially in the spiritual world, or leaders, business owners, we have a lot of stuff that we have to deal with around money. But it's important to realize that we're still human. We still get to have our own desires. We still get to have what we want. And so denying the truth doesn't make it any less true. I love that you said, we just feel depressed about it. We don't feel alive. And God knows the world needs more people that are feeling alive. So instead of, well, there's a label this, and sure, we can tell ourselves, oh, society has conditioned us to want labels because it's all a money-making capitalistic machine. Sure, maybe. But at the end of the day, the question is simple. What makes you come alive? What do you naturally gravitate to, no matter what it is, probably since you've been a child, right? And what haven't you? Like I grew up with earrings and diamonds in my ears since I was a few years old, right? That was the fun thing that Daddy and I went to do. We went to the jewelry store to buy me something pretty, right? Beautiful. My dad had 5 Mercedes, and it was, yes, for him, there was the ego part of it too, and all of that, which I am a little bit more careful about and suppress. But he always taught me about the power of things being well made, of excellence, of mastery. Yeah, and that's what I love. It's that sense of mastery, that excellence, all that, the art, the artistry that goes into making something, right?
Right.
As well as that divine creative energy channeling that comes to create something out of nothing, right? Which is fascinating. And so when it comes to giving ourselves permission to actually be spiritual, wealthy, enjoy luxury, defy the norms, not because we're trying to follow what everyone else tells us, but because we're actually following affluence. And affluence is an influx and an inflow of abundance. It's the flow of abundance. It comes from the Latin word affluere, to flow abundantly. So affluence isn't just about wealth. It's about a constant flow of abundance, a constant influx of supply of anything, which we tend to attribute to wealth. And so I think one thing I want people to think about is, where have you told yourself or started to judge yourself about something you want? You've been told you can or cannot have, is too big or too much or too fill in the blank. But in your heart and in your soul, you're like, that makes me come alive. I don't need to justify it. It just happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can we start to give ourselves permission? And it really is a stretch, because it's naturally who you are. And then we start to bump up against all the conditioning about all the judgment and all the resistance. Like, people won't understand me, right?
Exactly. And as human beings, we want to belong. We want to be a part of a community, friend circles, group, whatever it is, right? Work, family, right? And we don't want to lose the people around us. So we try to put a notch down. We say like, oh yeah, I wouldn't like it either. Or yeah. So we kind of contribute the conversation that actually we know we don't even feel or think this way anymore. But it's such a difficult then situation to, how do I get out of this now? How do I tell my friends that after all these years, I think differently about this now? How do I tell in my workspace, in my parents, whoever, right, that now I'm this person? Like, I remember when I started to do coaching, when I started to write, when I started to do astrology, when I started to dress the way I want, when I started to do my makeup the way I want, my hair the way I want, I felt I needed to justify myself why I'm doing that. And I had to justify that I'm actually allowed to do this. And then I was like, oh my God, there's so much conditioning that came in my upbringing that I was completely controlled and I was not allowed to be myself. And now I literally felt like this bird that you open the cage and it's just like, wherever you want to go. And then it's like, where do I want to go? And yeah.
And those limitations, because affluence, allowing ourselves to truly experience and have the consistent felt experience of an inflow and influx of abundance, and feeling abundant, experiencing that flow like a river streaming through us. It's naturally a part of us, but it takes the awareness that that's true for us, and then the permission to be that way. And that's the trickier part of it, right? Because affluence is a way of being, it's a way of thinking, right? Affluent people behave a certain way, they think a certain way, they make decisions a certain way, they have very specific standards and values that they abide by. They've worked through their resistance to money and to wealth, right? And they have defined what affluence looks like and feels like for themselves. It's a natural part of their existence, right? It's not an aspirational thing. It's like an operating system within them already. It's a different lens that they look at the world through and themselves through.
Absolutely. And I want to point out the word standards, because I think standards in society became a word that should be more emphasized, in my opinion. And standard can be in so many different ways. Is it a standard how you hold yourself in a relationship? the relationship you have with yourself, if you keep your own word, if you show up the way you said you would. So there are so many different ways of standard. And I think the more we raise our bar, the more we raise our standard, and we start to communicate that we have that new standard, that is when many people get very quickly upset, most of them because they benefited from us not having a standard or tolerating or allowing less. So standard, even if we take it, let's say, to fashion, yes, you can buy an item for $10, for $50, for $100, right? But obviously the standard of the quality between the $10 and to $100 is going to be a whole different quality. And if you put another zero on the end or two, it's going to be, again, a different quality. Now, I'm not saying that the more expensive it gets, the better the quality is. But usually what we will find is that diamonds have a quality, right? So that's why we pay for that. And I think people need more to think about more, like, what is standard in my own reality right now? Like, what am I tolerating? What am I allowing? What do I know actually would be right here? Even if it's just a relationship, even if it's just how people communicate between each other. It's like, do I have a standard here? It's like, for example, something very interesting that many people had a lot of comments when I mentioned that. I personally don't like when people call me names. Hi, babe. Hi, hon. Hi, darling. How beautiful. Even though beautiful is probably the most beautiful in all of these, I don't like it. Especially when people know my name. Now, if I go in a store and there's a random person that doesn't know me, yes, they want to start a sentence, so they say something like that. But the people that know my name, for example, that actually was on Facebook, and I said, actually, I don't like that. I feel it's putting me down. When you say that, you're not respecting actually my real name, because how many people say to somebody, hey, love, hey, love, hey, love? It's like, I don't want to be one of them. I am me. My name is Julia, and I want to be called Julia. And the second part of that is coming up from background of narcissistic abuse. Narcissists usually use the names because they have 2 or 3 or 4 people same time. So it's very convenient that they use one name, hey, love, for every one of them, so they don't accidentally switch the names between the people. This is where it comes from. So having that, those two, it was a big conversation, but I just understood that is my standard. That is my standard, how I want to be treated. If you go in a luxury hotel, let's say the W, and you go to the reception and you wanted to check in, and they say to you, hi, darling, you want to check in? That wouldn't be good. And so people in an affluent lifestyle, they have certain standards. And I think people need to understand there's nothing wrong with you wanting more, but it's just uncomfortable when you're not used to that and you want to push through it, and you have to set new standards and you have to communicate those things, because many people will fall apart on your way.
Yes, and the other piece of that is standards and boundaries, right? Which is a huge,
yeah.
Yes, right? Yeah, I think you and I were talking, right? When I was given the affluent leadership matrix, there were 4 core pillars to affluent leadership, of which the second one was standards and boundaries, right? And if we just, that alone, if we really spent a month looking at the standards that we hold, all the things that we say are, oh, it's fine, but it's not. Oh, I can handle it. It's not so bad, but it really is, right? Or where we say yes when we want to say no, or where we dumb down or smile, but we're afraid to be difficult, bitchy, all the words that whatever we don't want to be judged for. But I've watched some of the TV shows, of people, rich people that are investing in different things, or from, and I get that this is all TV, right? That there's been real estate shows, there's been investment shows on TV of people that are really rich. how much they value their time, how direct they are, how uncomfortable I am with that level of directness, how they just don't, there's not much nicety. There might be polite or maybe not, but there's just, they are who they are. Take it or leave it. Like, I'm moving on to something else. I'm not here in the pleasing business. I'm in the making money business or making a difference business or whatever they want to do, or living my life and I don't want you in my life business, you know? And I was like, oh, I'm not used to that because I'm used to being so accommodating. I'm used to be so pleasing. I'm used to, bending over backwards or having some leverage on someone, so it's like, oh, and also the balls, the directness of saying, yeah, I'm going to tell you something. And that's not what's so rare. Like 0.001% of people will tell you, yeah, I would like you right now to call me by my name. And I tell people this, if somebody says my name wrong, I will immediately correct them. I was like, no, my name is Priscilla. I'm sorry, but people call me Stephanie because my last name is Stefan. They call me Patricia, which I absolutely hate. Sorry, apologies to all Patricias, not sorry. And I'm like, no, my name is Priscilla. That is my name.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. And they apologize profusely. I'm like, I understand, that's okay, but please, now you know my name. Please call me by my name. And the same thing. And this is, and if people are noticing that they're feeling uncomfortable, that they're noticing places where we're like, ugh, this is normal, this is great. We're unhooking some things that have been lodged and set in place that don't serve us, right? Because I think when it comes to who are we naturally, who are we at our essence, there's a level of truth telling that is blinding a bit, right? Because you have to look at the truth. There's no room for semi-truths or sort of a truth. Maybe I can pass it off as a truth. It either is a truth or it's a lie.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's great combination, because now you understand your truth and all these different tools that can help you to understand yourself. But now it's like the journey within, right? It's like, how do I value myself? Going back to the second house, right? How do I value myself? How do I respect myself? What are my standards? And standards now in all those conversations. And once you find that actually the real truth, your real standard is so much different than what you experience right now, you're now on the journey of setting those boundaries, of communicating directly with people what you know, of knowing if I have to lose a person because I've communicated that, then that is the path. And that's the letting go part. Then we then go through and learn to communicate and stop pleasing and just allowing ourselves to be ourselves. And yes, we're going to lose people. We're going to lose people on this journey, because you cannot take everyone that's been benefiting from you, that the way you used to be, to the whole new version of yourself that you want to be. You can't take everybody with you there. Some people will join you. Some people will leave. Some people will come in the middle of the journey, in the end, or wherever, right? But it takes a lot from us to understand, what do I truly want? And will I go for it? Or will I sit back and just watch my desires fade away because I'm so scared and I'm so much holding on to whatever's keeping me where I am right now, because I don't want to lose them, or I don't want to hurt them, or I don't
and
want
that's the depth of the work you do. Sorry to interrupt you. It's like, yes, the chart is great, right? Because the chart illuminates the path where you've gone from, all the different aspects, all the different elements of what makes you naturally brilliant, wealthy, abundant, all the things. And then, as you said, here's the gap. Who you are, who you've conditioned yourself to be, and likely who you'd like to become.
Yeah.
And that's where pinpointing the deeper beliefs, the old conditioning. In my case, right, lots of codependency, lots of people pleasing, a lot of giving my power away, right, to other people.
Yeah.
Not valuing what I do. These are some of my small pieces, right? Dimming down the light and the power that I have. Ouch.
I think, and I have chills. I think, and I read and I learned before, so two different things here. When I was going through all healing those relationship patterns. I have a mother with a lot of narcissistic tendencies. And so I attracted a lot of men in a similar way. When I was going through this and I came across the name narcissism, it was new to me. I'm like, I even don't know what it is. I know my mother was controlling. That I knew there was there was
no doubt.
Yeah,
no
exactly.
doubt about that, right?
It's like, what time did you go to bed yesterday? Why do you have on WhatsApp that you are still awake at 2 a.m.? It's not your business. I'm 20 plus. Right? But that's a good picture, an idea of how it was. So basically, the narcissist, let's say when we, not only in the family, but let's take relationships, the narcissist itself, they pick very powerful people. So whenever they pick the people for their relationships, so like they take very powerful people. But at the moment when they pick those people don't know that they are very powerful, and those people are still in this behavior of pleasing, and I want to be liked, and I can't say anything against you, whatever, right? It's like, so they have the power already in there, and that's why they are so attractive to narcissists, because they can't really protect themselves, or they don't know how. But same way, they're giving all the power to the narcissist. So that's why that becomes very interesting interplay between the empath and the narcissist, right? Because the person that is the empath, most of them are very, very powerful. And so through this journey, they then learn to set the boundaries and to speak up and to grow and all of the fun things that happen along this journey, right? But from the narcissist perspective, this is a beautiful picture, because literally the empath is the source. They get the energy, they get whatever they need, right? So literally they suck out the life out of you. This is how we feel afterwards, right? Because all the power that we have, they literally energetically take it away. And that's why people, they crush down then. But then when you find back to your power and you start to build up your boundaries and you start to work on yourself, the power is always within you. Yeah, you might be depleted at that point because they took a lot from you. But after some weeks and some months and some years, depends how deep you are in the healing and how long you've been in a relationship, your power grows. So, right. So they usually pick very powerful people. Going back to saying, like, the value that you bring, the amount that you can channel in your work, the impact, you have very, very powerful abilities. And yet we come from a family or whatever happened in life that we didn't believe in that. But the power, that was never a question. And that will be never a question. It's only now about, nobody saw it, but I want to believe in that now. Nobody accepted it, but I do now. Everybody criticized me and I felt it's worthless, but it's not. Does it make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Thank you for sharing that. And we all have some distorted patterns, behaviors, beliefs, dynamics in our past that are heroines' journeys back home to ourselves and to our power, for sure. Yeah. I want to spend a little bit of time, if it's okay, and shift gears. This has all been so powerful. I'm hoping it's activating ideas and just comfort and edginess. I want to talk to people about astrocartography for just a little bit, and why it's so important to live where you energetically thrive, and to know the places actually that might be depleting you or maybe not adding much to your life, right? I've been looking for an astrocartographer for 3 years. I got recommendations. I posted on Facebook. I looked at everyone's website, and it was just like, nope. And then you and I started working together in April. And then you're like, oh, and there's this thing. And I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. And so then you did my astrocartography chart, which was so illuminating, because I knew that there was some truth that's, we all know how we enter some like houses or spaces and we feel either oh my God, this is my home. Like, this is where I should be. Or we traveled someplace and we're like, oh my God, I come alive here. And other places are like, oh my God, get me out of here. How quickly can I get out? We've all had some version of that experience, right? Now, amplify this to the globe, right? In cities and regions and countries, right? I know you said that there's like the sun line. There are different lines of the planets, right? There's Jupiter, Mars, sun lines, Venus lines. They all, affect communications and all different aspects of ourselves, right? And for me, when you told me that here where I live in Northern California is like there's the Chiron line, which is the wounded healer line, and it was not beneficial for my business at all, and there was all this healing happening to get the hell out of here. I was like, fuck you and fuck this shit, because that's not cool. Yes, there's a lot of healing, and that's not what I want to do. And coincidentally, for those that don't know, I'm from Brazil originally, and so it was fortuitous, I guess, or practical, that the number one place, I think, for my son, my money lines, my relationship, communication, prosperity, just thriving, was in Brazil, of all places, right? And then we identified multiple different places on the planet. And then you did it just not only for me, but for my husband as well, because I wanted to know where we would both thrive. And so just so you know, if you're in a relationship, right, you can do an astrocartography reading to look at where the lines intersect of benefit for both you and a partner. And you did that for me, which was very helpful when I was in a panic in the middle of the summer and going, I've got to get out of here. And we know that this is not our final resting spot here, but it was an affirmation. It was one of those illuminations of what's already feels true, right? Just to be confirmed on a map that you can actually point on, So tell us about what astrocartography is, how it can be so powerful for people that are looking to thrive and not just survive.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. So imagine a map of the world, and imagine on this map you have lines. They're going like this. So from one point to another across the whole world. And then we have about 12 of them. So 12 colorful, different colors, different lines. And obviously they cross also on different places. So with other words, all the planets that we have, the sun, the moon, the Venus, the Jupiter, the Mars, the Saturn, right? The Chiron, all these planets, I mean, they are in the sky, so they have their own energy. Every planet has a different energy, right? That's why we also look at this in astrology. But now those energetic imprints are now across the world, everywhere. And so depending where the person was born, and at that time the person was born, and the place, the time, right? Every person will have different lines going on different locations. With other words, you can have, let's say, the sun line, which is like, let's say in my case, right? For me, the sun line is very close to Sydney. This is where I live right now.
Australia.
Exactly. Sydney, Australia. Yeah. And even though it is in the ocean, we can feel those lines a certain amount of kilometers or miles away. We can feel the energy. Now, we don't necessarily assume, until we're not looking into those things, we don't understand why in some places we feel good. Now, what is the sun? You're shining. You're happy. You have fun. You enjoy your life, right? For me, it's also because it's a sunny location, right? The sun is shining. It's the ocean. It's the palm trees. It's the weather conditioning that I always dreamed about, that I knew that's going to be my life. And people also want to see you when you have your sun line, right? So sun is also connected to the Leo energy. People want to see you. So what is the Leo? Leo is the person who is on stage, and people look up to them and they encourage and they support, and it's like, go, go, go. We want to see you, right? So that's the sun energy. So people want to see you. This is where you thrive. You've been literally, now I'm not saying somebody else is going to put you on stage, but when you're on stage, people want to see you. Whereas in other locations, different planets, and there are positive and negative, harmonious or disharmonious aspects to it as well, right? So let's say if I would have a disharmonious aspect on my sun line, then all of what I just said would be disharmonious. With other words, don't bother going. Because on the one side, you will be like, you feel like you're so close, but then every time you will be shut down and locked down and something is going to happen. It's just not going to work out. So you're going to have this up and down. At some point, it's going to be too exhausting. Whereas, for example, our planets, let's take the Saturn line. This is planet. Saturn is the planet of karma. Funny enough, 2 days ago, Saturn finally is moving direct for the next 7 months. Saturn been going backwards, so retrograde, for the last 5 months. So if something has not been working out, now it's time to move forward again. Saturn is the lord of karma. With other words, wherever you have Saturn in your chart, this is where you have to do your deepest soul work. It's the karmic patterns, the problems that you have for several lives before, and you've been struggling with. And so wherever that placement is now, this is the area that your soul wanted to evolve and said, you've done that for so many lifetimes. We want you to change that. We want you to finally master that subject so you can move on and have a different experience of life. So in my case, my Saturn is in my 7th house of relationships. That's why I talk so much about relationships. Not because they've been easy, but because I had a lot of karma in my relationship, speaking of the narcissism, right? So for example, if somebody has a challenging Saturn line and they live on a Saturn line and they did not work on themselves, karma is going to slap them in the face for ages until they face it. And that's the beauty now. Once you face it, because actually the Saturn line is just behind the sun line here for me in Australia. It's also in the ocean. It's further away. So it's not as intense as I would be living on the line, which is almost your case, even though you have the Chiron line, but you almost literally live on the line. So the intensity gets more the closer you are on this line. So that for me was Saturn that played out in a relationship. So I looked into my relationships and all of that started, right? But once you work through all of those things, Saturn rewards you because now you've done so much work, and then it's going to give you a gift. This is where you come from. You've been working so hard over and over and over and testing and testing and testing. You become the master. And that's going to give you all the beauty and all the benefits and all the things that you deserve because you've done the work. So obviously the energy, if you live on the Saturn line or if you live on the sun line, it's going to be completely different.
Or the Chiron line, or the Jupiter line, or the Mars line of communication, right?
Can talk about the Mars line because I think there are so many different things that I heard about the Mars line, and I'm Scorpio, so I'm naturally ruled by Mars and Pluto. So people have said Mars line is not a good line. I want to clarify in my personal experience, I think it's an incredible placement for me to live because and this is true, right? Mars is the warrior. Mars is the one who goes to war, like literally. That's the war energy, right? And we see this right now happening in Europe, right? But Mars has this energy, right? But it's also, let's say, my chart ruler. So the difference here, for example, whereas when I was in Bali, nowhere close the Mars line, I was walking about 4,000 steps a day. Now I'm here in Sydney. I could take my phone and show you I walk between 25 and 30,000 steps a day. Mars gives me energy. I'm more active. Mars is also the sports person, is the athlete. It's the ones who wants to compete. It's the ones who has a lot of drive, but Mars is also real estate. So all of that combines. And that's why I say you have to look into your chart because maybe for one person, Mars is going to be very negative. But in my experience, the moment I put my feet on Sydney, I feel energized. I feel alive. I feel like nothing can stop me. I have so much energy. Literally, like I could walk all day, not because I don't want to drive, but on the other side, I don't even want to drive because I know I have this excess energy that I want to use. Right? So for every person, it's going to be different. But let's talk about the Venus and the Jupiter, the most beautiful ones, right? So Venus is obviously creativity, Venus is relationships. And when we met, I was in Thailand, and in Thailand, I had the Venus line. So relationships, because I was there under the influence of the Venus line. First of all, you manifest money, you manifest beauty, beautiful things, but also different relationships. It can be intimate, it can be friendships, it could be business, it could be any of these. And I remember when I was talking about the money and fortune reading, this is how we got all together, right? Venus is money. I was literally just launching my my offer with the money and fortune astrology readings, and I met so many new women and new people that I started to work with. And looking back, it's like, oh, of course, I was under the Venus influence. So Venus brings you abundance, and it brings you beauty, it brings you connections, it brings you money. Whereas the Jupiter, for example, is the luck line. You have a lot of luck. Everything is easy. You come out and people just help you. Everything just manifests randomly. It's so easy. It's effortless. Whereas if you were to do the same things on a different location with a different energy, different line, that will be completely different scenario. So that's why every person has different energy in different places. And that comes also very handy when we want to do business and when we want to invest, let's say, real estate, make investments. Because let's say you want to buy a house, and you want to buy a house and you get that offer, and the price is very appealing, and you say, this looks great. And then you look into astrocartography, and let's say that house is on the Saturn line, Karma line, or that or that house is on the Pluto line. Pluto is transformation. Now that house might be renovated and looks new, but if it's on a Pluto line, 99.9%, you will have to do a lot of transformations on this house. With other words, renovations. With other words, more money, more time, more energy into that subject, into that real estate that you want to purchase. And this is where it becomes very interesting, because you then also can look into, so where are my positive lines, right? So for example, we discussed yours, right? And then you can literally also see that you start to manifest, attract people, business partners, relationships from these countries. Now, most of my people are from, most of my clients, or people that I speak to, they are all from the US. And in US, I have my Mercury communication line, and I have beautiful lines there. Now, for me personally, I've been everywhere, and I said, Sydney is number one, US is number two, right? If it has to be, that it will be. But that's my personal choice. But then we can look into it and say, okay, if I want to grow my business, where are the people that I need to connect to? Yes, you can fly to that place, but you can also use the algorithm, or just put the intention out that you want to connect with these people, and you will see that the relationships are much better. I'll give you another example. When I was a little girl, I loved Italy, and I've been, I think, to Italy 5 times, and I always felt good in Italy. I always loved Italy. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to go. I'm so amazing. I even said to my mom one day, am I going to marry an Italian, no matter what she says, because she was very strict even about who I'm going to marry, right? So I was like, I don't care what you're going to say. I'm going to marry an Italian guy. And funny enough, I checked. In Italy, I have the Venus line. So the relationships, the love, the money, and I'm in Sydney. And right now, when I look around me, most of the people are Italians. And I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. Because the energy connects. I love them. because I love Italy. I have good energy in Italy, literally on the map. That means that also Italians respond good to me. So we can connect those things, and we see that, well, maybe there are people, let's say, that you don't connect with. Maybe if you look at your astrocartography, you don't have a good line there.
That's
Or maybe
fascinating.
you have a lot of healing to do, and you have to go to A, B, Z, D to do all this healing work because you live on a healing line. So, I mean, it's good for your soul, but it will never stop. So, do you want to do healing until the end of your life and
Nope.
never get, you know what I mean? Because whatever the energy is, whatever the planetary line is, that energy will stay there for the rest of your life. It will never change. Only you can move. This is why I emphasize those things, because if we see that one place doesn't work out for us, or we have come to a place in our evolution where we want to change things up, and you see that that location has been always the same, it's not going to change. You're going to move for the change to happen.
Yep. I remember you telling me loudly and clearly over and over again. And I did hear you.
You've been asking for that for 3 years, so.
Yes, 3 years I was looking, like actively looking. So I highly encourage you do really phenomenal astrocartography readings. It can be for a single person, for a couple. You also use the tool of astrology to do money and fortune readings, as well as relationship readings. You know, again, we look at limiting beliefs, karma. What are the core energies that are presencing themselves? What do you need to know? How is this showing up for you? What is the medicine here to move you through this? And you also use your very intuitive psychic abilities to really help, you know, pinpoint things. I have that spidey sense of, you know, this is what I, you know, unique ability to look at the why. Why is this happening? Why is this continuing? Would you like to stop? So here's the medicine to stop. So if you don't want to know the truth, don't speak to Julia. That would be a mistake. I can tell you right now. If you're looking to really acknowledge who you really are, what you really want, what's been getting in the way, it's a deeply powerful way, because of course you bring astrology, but you brought in gene keys, you brought in human design when it was appropriate, you brought in so many different aspects that in the moment you can intuit and help people. And you don't need to know all the details. You just need to, because she'll just capture the point of, like, this is the issue, this is the medicine, this is how it's been playing out, this is the way to change it, right? And you also, of course, do one-on-one coaching on money mindset, money leadership, and helping people dive deep. You also have a wonderful money course that you developed earlier this year, that's deep and rich and looks at the bigger truth-telling questions, which I'm really excited about. Is there any very quick point, because we're kind of over time already, but is there any quick point that you want to make that we might have missed before I go to the lightning round?
I think we're complete, yeah.
Okay, ready? 5 questions.
There is always more to share, and maybe that we will manifest another episode, because I love the number 7. But
Oh yes, I know my mother's lucky number is 7. I always love the number 7. So let's look at 5 quick questions. Answer with the first question that comes to mind, okay?
Okay.
What is your definition of leadership?
Leadership is, for me, that you know exactly who you are, what you want, and you're able to stand up for this, and you're able to work for this. So pretty much you understand yourself and you walk this path. And by you being that authentic expression of who you are, because you radiate that truth of your expression, whatever that is, you lead yourself towards your truth, towards your destiny, towards who you're meant to be, your soul's purpose, your soul's evolution. And then you also inspire others to become the same and break free from whatever has happened in their lives.
Thank you. Wonderful question. Number 2, answer. What's your leadership edge right now? What's stretching you and your leadership now?
what's stretching me right now? So I'm actually excited, but it's also stretchy because, as you just mentioned before, I created this money course, and I've been taking my time with the Saturn and with the relocation and everything, but I'm launching it now. So this for me is a big in the stretchy path because I have taught on astrology, I have taught on passion and purpose, on mindset, on psychology, on all the readings. Money is now the focus, and it is a little bit stretchy because it's the first time that I'm literally, it's like I'm teaching money, and yeah, feels a little bit stretchy, but it's amazing.
And it's so natural. Like you said, other people would see you in living in these places like me. You're like, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
All right. Question 3. What is your Soulfluent leadership archetype, and how has it informed your work and allowed you to embrace your natural leadership abilities?
Archetype.
Yes, you're Soulfluent leadership. I think you're a mystic, aren't you? Didn't you take the quiz?
I think, yeah, I'm the mystic. I'm also the magician.
Okay.
Depending. Yes, the mystic, definitely, because I think it's taking time to develop all of these skills or to remember all of these skills and to believe and trust your own feeling. But once you understand what's going on inside of you and how to use those skills, those gifts, you lead with those because they become your tools, and no one can take these tools away from you. And you can use those tools in any area of your life. And that's not only for coaching or for relationships. It's literally every day that I'm using them, and I'm fascinated how actually handy they became over time now.
I would agree on that one. Question number 4. What's been your greatest life or greatest leadership lesson that you carry with you?
My lesson is definitely the relationships. And I had many times where I questioned authority. Again, I come from a background where authority was controlling, manipulative. And so for me, I was even raised as like, if the person is older than you can't say no. You have to follow what they are saying because they are older, so they are wiser, so they know better, with other words. So for me, it was questioning authority, not from an ego perspective, but from what is my standard, who am I, how I want to be treated, and what is right for me or not.
Last question. What is your favorite leadership quality?
Transparency.
You do it well. And truth-telling, I would say.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
And transparency. Yeah. Because when you're transparent, you say things. Truth for me is always, again, Scorpio, lying detector, just a walking one. So we spot those things, and truth is one of my highest values, because once you break it, it's like a glass of wine, you're never going to be able to fix it. So it's very important for relationships.
It definitely is. I think this has been incredibly rich, dynamic, winding conversation about who we are, what we really want, what we're willing to do or be to have it, and to acknowledge who we are, the energies that are working either in our favor or not, both in our environment, in our souls, in our creations. And I highly recommend reaching out to Julia. You can reach her at nagutova.com. You'll also have her links to reach out to her, connect with her on Instagram and Facebook. And I highly, highly recommend her work. She's really something special. And I wouldn't say that lightly. We've been working together now for several months. So this isn't just a flash in the pants either. She has pushed every button there is and will continue to. And that's why I come back to her. Because she does hold me to such a high standard. And I think we want that. I have that with my own clients. And you do the same. So thank you, Julia, for being here today for such a rich conversation. And it's always nice to speak to somebody on the other side of the planet.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. I really, really enjoyed it. And I also want to emphasize your strong abilities when it comes to writing, to channelings, and how psychic and intuitive you also are, because that has also made a big shift in my evolution. So I want to say thank you as well,
I
because
deeply appreciate it. It's been my honor and my pleasure. We're kindred spirits and that, we give it and we can take it.
because your work, I haven't had experience anything like that like in my life before. And it was like I knew one aspect, but then with your abilities, we opened a whole new dimension to that. And that was very healing, very transformative. And I always listen back to your channelings, and I'm fascinated. So I definitely recommend also, if you haven't been working with Priscilla, please do so, because there is no other like this.
I say the same thing about you. We're special medicine women. So thank
Yeah.
you so much, Julia, for everything. So goodbye, everyone. We'll see you next time.